So welcome everybody to today's presentation about how AP automation is transforming the back office. This is Will Booth from DNA Business Management Solutions, your Sage 300 business partner and experts in all things Sage 300 and related. And today we're focusing on Sage AP automation powered by Beanworks. So Beanworks is a company based in Vancouver. They've been in business for over 10 years. They are experts in AP automation, and they created their own AP automation tool that's cloud-based. So their tool sits on the internet, but they also are a strategic partner with Sage, and they created the integration with Sage 300 so that the two systems work seamlessly together. And I'm very happy to be able to have Annabelle Kovacs, an account executive at Beanworks, on with us today. She's going to be providing the lion's share of the presentation and questions. As I said before, this meeting is being recorded, so please put any questions in the chat and we'll answer at the end because we have quite a lot to go through. And I think you all know who DNA is, so I won't get into that. I'm on the sales side, so at the end, I'll have a slide up with information about how to contact us if you have any more questions to go ahead with this. So I think I won't spend any more time, Annabelle. I'll just hand it right over to you. Welcome and thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Will, for that fabulous introduction. As he mentioned, my name is Annabelle, an account executive here at Sage AP Automation. Been with the company for about 1.5 years, and I help clients determine if AP automation makes sense by creating business cases for them. So that's my role here in the organization, and we'll be leading the webinar for today. Thank you, Will, for this opportunity. So let's get into the webinar. Today, what we're going to be talking about is the manual aspects of AP. Then we'll talk about what the research is saying. We'll touch on the benefits of automating. Then we'll jump into the product demonstration. And finally, we're going to open it up to you guys for Q&A to answer any questions that you may have. From our experience talking to finance professionals, we typically see that the core problems related to AP are speed, tracking, and finally, the amount of time spent manually managing AP. There are 4 basic questions you can ask yourself to determine how manual your AP actually is. That includes, what percentage of your week is spent on data entry? What percentage of your week is spent following up on approvals? What percentage of your week is spent managing payments? And finally, what percentage of your week is spent scanning and filing paper and possibly even labeling those file folders? The reason we focus on the time spent on each part of the process is because through hundreds of customer interviews, we have identified that this is the root cause of the other challenges. Think about it. If you spent less time coding, your invoices could be approved faster. If it took less system quicker. If they were digitalized and available in your accounting system faster, the organization would have faster access to the documents and wouldn't need to spend nearly as much time tracking and hunting them down. Now more than ever, it's important to have a streamlined AP process in place to ensure that your critical financial operations continue during these uncertain times. Last year, we partnered with Level Research, who did an in-depth study on AP processes across different organization sizes. And what they found was that the larger enterprises have caught on to this reality and have already put solutions into place to speed up the AP process, while small to medium-sized enterprises, typically generating less than $100 million in revenue, typically had low levels of automation. Well, why might this be the case? Historically, these tools have only been available for large enterprises because there was more of a need of automating with organizations processing a high volume of invoices. The lack of tools available for these small to medium-sized enterprises left them with limited options, often patching different tools together, combined with paper, filing cabinets, and manual follow-up. Based on that research, we have focused our efforts on helping these SMEs achieve the same results as the high enterprise level organizations. And after diving into the results, you can see that the lion's share of issues related to AP stem from the amount of time each of these processes take. Data entry and manual routing of invoices are the primary concern of almost everyone related to the AP function. But we didn't stop here. We actually conducted our own time studies with over 200 AP teams to find where they were spending their time, and guess what the data found? From our results, we found that over 57% of the average AP person's time was spent on data entry, and another 19.3% of their time was spent managing approvals. This made our goal very clear then. If we freed up time in those categories, we would help significantly improve the lives of everyone related to AP. So how many different ways could an AP professional look to solve these problems? There are a few different categories of software that can tackle the problems related to AP. Some examples include 1, document management. However, if time is a concern, these solutions can take up to a year to implement. Another strategy can be a data entry automation tool. However, this would leave you in need of a workflow solution. And then lastly, there's AP automation. And this typically focuses on being an end-to-end AP automation tool. So for the rest of the presentation, I'm going to be focusing on making the case for AP automation. AP automation will eliminate repetitive tasks, so no need or no more scanning, printing, and emailing invoices. This will all be automated instead. You'll also get real-time data, so this will give you the ability to make those decisions based on that data, so informed decisions. And finally, procure to pay. Avoid late and possibly even duplicate payments by managing them all within the same system. With Sage AP Automation, you do get unlimited seats at no extra cost. All of your data is in one place, and yes, that can include multiple legal entities. And by being a SaaS cloud solution, you can access it securely from anywhere. Now you can have a complete AP system that frees you up to make real-time decisions and do what you really need to do in order to succeed in your role. Once an organization adopts Sage AP Automation, we typically see 83% reductions in data entry, and then we see about 95% reductions in the time spent managing approvals, as well as other significant reductions in the number of vendor and internal inquiries related to the state of invoices and/or payments. Going back to Level's research, it turns out that the research bears out similar findings. They found that automated teams had significant reduction in paper invoice volume, significant reductions in approvals of invoices, and improved visibility of unpaid invoices. Now, Sage AP Automation is here to help making accounting teams more productive. We believe that accountants should be freed from monotonous tasks. No one on this call went to school to do data entry all day long, so we want to try to help give you and provide you that tool so that you can focus on higher priority tasks. Excellent. So now don't just take our word for it. We're going to show you exactly how Sage AP Automation works. So I'm going to switch my tab here to be able to show you the product demonstration.
Great.
So
you can
welcome.
See your screen no problem. Looks great.
Excellent, Will. Thank you so much for the confirmation. So as we switch between the screens, welcome to the Sage AP Automation platform. Right before we jump into the nitty-gritty details of each of these steps, typically I like going over the layout. That way you'll have a strong understanding of what's happening during the entire time. So within our software, we support 3 modules: invoices, purchase orders, and payments. Invoices is really the bread and butter of our software, with the other 2 modules being optional. And now the reason for that is typically automation, it can start from the base here in the invoice module. As I mentioned, it's the core of our system. And then the other 2 can be added at any time. so that it's applicable to your workflow. For the purpose of today's demonstration, since invoices will be applicable for everyone, we will start from this module here, then we'll jump into payments, and then we'll also touch on purchase orders. Currently, we are in the In Progress tab of the Invoice module. So this is the most general screen that you'll see. The way that we have it broken out is in the very center, we have all of the invoices that are in the In Progress status up here at the top. Up here at the top, we have the different stages that typically flow from left to right, of course, unless anything's rejected. And then over here, we have the org unit. So the org unit is designed to help mirror your existing structure and to help filter invoices as well as customize user access and permissions. So to give you an example, you can have your parent company listed at the top, and then depending on the type of segmentation your organization, you can have it broken out. And in my case, it's broken out by legal entities, and then we can have further segmentation by departments. Again, this can be as simplified or as detailed as you need it to be, but some of the interesting functionality that you get from the org unit, again, is the filtering options. So imagine if these indeed represented different legal entities. That also means different integrations with each of your Sage accounting files. What this is saying is that because everything is currently highlighted in dark green, I'm able to access all of my invoices across all of my legal entities and all of my departments here within one view. So no need to have separate logins or toggle between screens. Again, all invoices are available from my entire organization. And if I need to filter anything out, that's how I can use these segments. I can click on it, and now you'll notice that it was able to exclude some of those invoices. Now they're excluded. I'll highlight it again, and you'll notice that it pops up those invoices that were previously associated within that section. So that's the filtering functionality there. The second piece, and most important, is those user access and permissions. So because you have the opportunity to create as many logins as you'd like, for each of those individuals, you can specify exactly which sections of the organization they should be able to see. So for example, I'm in sales. In my own instance, I only have access to the sales tab. Everything else is hidden so that it's kept confidential, and I'm only able to access the information I need to see. The other type of customized user access and permissions is available at the top axis up here. A famous example would be for approvers. Typically, if an approver is only involved at this step, you might want to give them access only to the approvals tab. Again, everything else is kept hidden. So that way, when they log in, they'll immediately see their queue of invoices and they'll know exactly what needs to get done. So from a user adoption perspective, we wanted to make this as simple as possible. And to illustrate this even further, if I toggle between the different modules, you'll notice that everything pretty much stays the same, except for the color. And again, we did this intentionally to keep training as easy and simple as possible, so that once you do learn this invoice module, you're going to master the rest in no time and be able to add it on as soon as the time is right. So that concludes the system's architecture and layout. Next, as I mentioned, we'll begin with the invoice workflow. So we're going to jump into that very first step. And that first step is really to handle how you're currently receiving your invoices. So what we're currently finding is that although a lot of companies are moving to more automated solutions, there's still a handful of people that are still currently receiving their invoices in paper-based format. And we wanted to solve that right now so that there was a solution to help out in order to get those invoices into the system in an easier fashion. So first, let's talk about the paper-based invoices. For those types of invoices, you do have two options available. One of them includes your mobile phone. If you have an invoice, you can pull it out, take a photo, and then instantly input the invoice directly from there. Otherwise, if you're in a position where now you have a stack of papers on your desk, what you can do is take all the pages at once, batch scan them in, or even drag and drop that entire PDF file here, And what then happens is all the pages will pop up here on one line. So technically this represents one entire PDF file. Now to perform the splitting step, we have developed a couple tools up here at the top to make this step easier. So if I click this split button up here, what it's able to do is actually convert each page into its own individual invoice. If I have any backup pages or wanted to support the invoice with any type of documentation, we also have the drag and drop functionality so that you can sort those pages out. And once everything looks to go, so in my example here, we have one invoice with 3 pages, one invoice with 4 pages. As soon as it looks good to go, we'll press Save, Create Invoices, and now your splitting step is entirely completed. This will allow you, if you're currently spending time scanning pages one by one, or even using Adobe outside of our system to perform this action, you now get it all within the Create tab, integrated in our system. So you can think of this as an integrated PDF splitter, and then that way you'll be able to carry out the next actions immediately. So those are the solutions for the paper-based invoices. Now to talk about the electronic ones. As I mentioned, if we're moving to that more electronic way, what you'll find is that it'll definitely make this step easier, since you'll be able to essentially skip this create step. Now, the way that happens is, let's say you have an email already built in place where vendors are emailing you invoice PDFs. To help out to get those into the system, we will also provide you with designated email addresses, and they can be as complex as you'd like, such as to be routed to the appropriate entities or to a certain individual. You'll have those emails to use however you'd like for routing purposes, but whenever you're forwarding those, or our team can also set up, help you set up automated auto forward rules. What happens is our software then automatically picks up that PDF attachment and then drops it off into the In Progress tab. So this allows you to skip those steps of having to save, download, and re-upload that attachment within our software. It all happens right away behind the scenes. And so that concludes all the different types of ways you can get the invoices into the system. And to help encourage your vendors to increase that adoption rate, we'll help you and provide you with templates so that we can help train and get those vendors to email you those invoices at a higher rate. Moving forward, now that we've discussed how to get the invoices into the system, the next step is the In Progress tab. So the In Progress tab is where I like to say the magic happens, because this is a step where we mentioned we have found that an average AP person is spending 60% of their time on this step alone. When we went back to them, we found around, on average, 83% time savings. So now I'm going to explain exactly how that happens. So as soon as an invoice is submitted to the In Progress tab, what our software is able to do is overnight it captures the header details as well as dollar amounts down here. So that includes items such as vendor, the invoice number. If there's a PO in our system, we will automatically link the PO to the invoice based on the PO number on the invoice. So on my screen here, I have the PO represented side by side with the invoice. In addition to that, we'll capture dates, subtotals, totals, and taxes. So all that would typically be left to do would be the line items down here. But we have 2 solutions to automate this section as well. So because we're talking about a purchase order example, if applicable, the way that you can eliminate the data entry at the step is through PO adoption. So as soon as you click it, PO adoption then takes you to the screen here where you can match all of the PO or the receiving's data, adopt the lines, and then what will happen is your template down here will be populated so that your next action is to click submit for approval. Now, in the case that there's no PO match or POs are not applicable, we still wanted to create a solution to automate the template down here. Now, what we invented was smart code. And what we found is typically there's consistency in terms of the coding for reoccurring invoices. So as soon as you click smart code has an algorithm that takes into consideration the legal entity, the person coding the invoice, so that's what we reference in our system as the owner, as well as the vendor. So based on all of this, we then populate the template down here based on what was previously coded, so that again, in an effort to eliminate all of the data entry at the step, you can then submit for approval. Now, if you do need to make any changes for the coding, the nice part is that we're completely integrated with your Sage accounting system. So if a user is making any types of changes, they can start typing a portion of the string. Everything legitimate will pop up so that you can make your quick selection and again submit for approval. What you'll notice is that it was impossible for me to create any type of by accident duplicate items or any typos, again, since we have that direct integration and your accounting software will remain your source of truth. And the reason why this is so important is that for any type of applications that you're looking to add onto your existing workflow, the integration is important because in order to get the real time savings that you're looking for, you want to make sure that you're not adding duplicate steps. So by having the data consistent and accurate in our system, when there's a sync in one of the later steps, you'll know it's reliable because of that consistency and control we've built through our integration. So again, these solutions are only as good as their integrations, because if this was not consistent, you'd be spending time reconciling between the two systems and trying to see why the sync wasn't successful. So that's how our integration comes into play at this step here. So again, what happens in the In Progress tab is that auto capture takes care of header details and dollar amounts, and then you have smart code and PO adoption to take care of the rest. And if you need to override anything, you can click into any of these fields and make the appropriate edits. Excellent. So as soon as the In Progress step is done, and with the main goal of being to eliminate time on the step, once you're ready, you'll click Submit for approval. And now, as soon as I click this button, what our software is able to do is it automatically scans the data on the invoice. And based on the approval matrix that we help you set up in the initial onboarding process, it's now going to be automatically routed to the people that need to approve those invoices in the next step. So before we jump into how to set up that approval matrix, what the approver is actually going to be able to see is this queue of invoices in their approvals tab. To approve them, I can open up the view here again, and the actions are down here below, approve or reject. If they'd like to reject anything, they're actually forced to leave a comment indicating why. That way, the communication is transparent and tracked across everyone involved. A good news too is that these actions are also available on the mobile app. So especially during these times, if ever you need to approve or reject invoices, you'll have access to them at your fingertips and can perform those actions, again, essentially from anywhere. So that concludes the approvals, the approval actions. Next, quickly to illustrate how we automate the routing, I'm going to take you into the back end here. And we have different tabs here at the top to represent the approval channels. Now, the reason why we have approvals at each of these steps is because oftentimes we found that possibly the invoice approvers will be different from the ones approving the checks. So in order to make this distinction, we have approvals on each of those modules so that you can bring in the right people at the right time. So to keep it consistent, we'll continue with an invoice example here to keep it consistent with the invoice module. But again, you can create these channels and specify different rules at each of these steps. So with our approval matrix, you can create, in addition to creating unlimited users, you can also create as many case scenarios as you need so that we can automate all the possibilities for your invoices. All of these rows represent a separate or unique approval channel. So for each approval channel, you will have the option to give it a name. If you wanted to take this a step further, you can even give it a description so you know exactly where that approval channel is routing invoices to. And then we have this row. If applicable, if you have any type of dollar threshold, such as anything over 25,000 between a range or under a particular threshold, you can create these types of rules. And then on top of that, you can also use all of your lists that you're currently coding your invoices to create rules. So my example here is based on departments, but if you have different indicating criteria such as accounts or vendors, this is accessible to you to select any list and build that customized criteria. So continuing on with my example here, what my approval channel is saying is that for any invoices that are above $25,000 and that are associated with finance, we would like, and down here below is where you specify, we would like these members involved to approve the invoice. So what you're currently seeing here is the group logic. And it's actually an and/or logic, which allows you, if you want to decrease the time that the invoice is spending in the approval process and two people have the same level of authority, this group logic might work really well for you. What it's saying is that either Jack or Jill, whoever gets there first and approves the invoice, will complete the approval channel. Now, if we actually wanted to build sequential approval channels, that's also possible in our system, and that would look like this. So what this is now indicating is that the invoice needs to first go to Jill, and then once Jill approves it, and then Jack can approve it. So that's how you build the multi-layers. And again, no restrictions. You can add as many people as you'd like to make sure that all the pairs of eyeballs that need to approve those invoices or payments or purchase orders are able to come into the system and perform those actions. So that's how you'd be able to set up the approval channels. In addition to this customization, going back into the general settings, on top, or in addition to being able to create unlimited users and each of those users having their own customized user access and permissions, we then can also customize their notifications. So in an attempt to eliminate the manual follow-up, you can have each user be prompted each time an action is taken place, or there's this daily notification. What the daily notification does is it will send you a summary every single day of the outstanding items, but only if there are any new or outstanding items. That way you're only paying if necessary, so it's a clean way to remind your approvers to address those items in this daily notification section here. So now that you've seen how we can automate the routing as well as eliminate the manual follow-up, when we heard that about 20% of the time was spent on approval management, through these initiatives is how they found that we were able to reduce around 95% of that time spent on approvals. Once this is completed, so now you have your completed and approved invoices queuing up in the Export tab. The Export tab should technically be called the Sync because there will actually be no need to manually import or export files. All you'll need to do now with your approved invoices, last click at the can, so this is your control for what you're sending back. You'll make your selection, click Actions, Export Data, and now this will send all the invoice batch into your Sage accounting software so that you may post it from there. And this is why that integration is so important. So once this takes place successfully, we'll now graduate all of those invoices into the Archive tab. And now this Archive tab is what we're looking at, your new online filing cabinet, completely indexed and searchable by any criteria that you'd like. So if you ever have cases where you'd like to search invoices, maybe possibly by certain date ranges, accounts, maybe vendor, really any information that you need, you can create your custom filter section, even give it a label if you want to create a scalable filter. If you want to conceptualize this, you can think of this as a file folder. So at every time you want to pull it out, you'll highlight your filter, and then all the invoices that match that criteria will simply pop up. Now, if you're itching to find an invoice, you'll also have the global search up here at the top where you can search by specific text, and it'll also be able to pull up the information that you need right away. And then possibly one of my favorite parts of the system is our reporting tool. So I just pulled up another example based on the text of Amazon. I've pulled up 3 invoices. If I wanted to take this a step further And typically this is very handy if you need to distribute information, or even if you're going through audits. What you're going to be able to do with these filtered invoices is generate either a CSV or PDF file. And now the PDF ones are a little more unique to us, so I'll show you an example of those. And what you'll see here is the reporting options. So I have everything selected. That's showing the full scope of detail. So if you wanted to simplify it, that's possible as well. As soon as it quickly downloads over here, you'll notice that this is a regular PDF. So if you wanted additional backup, completely possible. If you wanted to email this out, also another option. So what the report looks like is that on the very first page, the summary, all 3 invoices we have filtered into the report. We can also use basic functionality, Control F, and search text. But possibly the coolest part of these reports would be these hyperlinks. So if I wanted to drill into invoice number 3, all I need to do is click on it, and it instantly took me there with header details, copy of the invoice image, line item details, the approval audit history, such as date stamps and comments, if any were left. And then finally, if you had backup documentation or a purchase order matched, it would all be compiled in one place for you to help with that reporting feature. Excellent. So now to conclude the invoice module, some of the last items that I wanted to discuss with you is the icons that we have to assist with some of the AP activity. Now, what I mean by that, going back into the In Progress tab, another challenge that some AP teams might be facing is duplicates. So we have duplicates at the invoice level and duplicate prevention at the payments level. So to first cover invoices, if I scroll between my invoices, you'll notice that on the right-hand side, we have a couple icons to assist with that. And so this one's referring that I can jump into the detailed view. If I click this button here, it'll pull up the PDF right away for me to see the image associated with that invoice. The figure 8 or infinity sign looking icon is to indicate that a purchase order has been linked to that invoice. And then here's the applicable part of preventing duplicates. So this double page outline in red is signifying that it's potentially a duplicate invoice. It'll even have a massive red banner at the top in capital letters. So as soon as I click this, it'll take me to the 2 items that it has flagged as duplicates based on invoice number and vendor, so that either you can determine if it's indeed a duplicate or delete one of the duplicates to make sure that your data is clean within the system and you're only syncing back legitimate invoices. Now, to prevent duplicates at the payment level, if we go back into the archive tab, I'll show you an example of how we accomplish this. So in the archive tab, the icon that represents mark as paid includes these dollar bills. So any dollar bill on an invoice will provide you with the payment details and the payment status. So this is why I mentioned that payments is optional. In order to support payments in our system and outside of our system, to give you that flexibility, if you're processing payments outside of our system, as long as you're marking it as paid within your Sage financial software, we have dual sync on payments. So we'll be able to pull in the payment status and payment details, again, represented by this dollar bill. And that way, even though you possibly may have not used us for payments, you'll still see all of the invoices with the full picture of the payment status. And this will help eliminate duplicate payments because it's synced in real time. So as long as you're marking paid as Sage 300, it will update it in our system and it will eliminate it from the payment queue here, making sure that you aren't executing any duplicate payments. And now that pretty much concludes the invoice module in a nutshell. Next, we're going to quickly touch on payments. So that will give you an example that if you did want to take the automation to the step here, what that would look like. Now for payments, the very first step is the Create tab. Within the Create tab, it's your aged payables list. Also, will automatically group vendor payments. So you'll notice that you have 2 invoices tagged to the 1 vendor payment. So this is how you can make that distinction here, whether you want to pay only one of the invoices or you want to pay those 2 invoices with 1 transaction. As soon as you click Create Payments, it then shuffles it into the next tab here, into In Progress. The In Progress at the payment level typically is automatic, will automatically match your invoice details to your payments. However, this is also your flexibility that if you ever want to change the bank account that it's coming out of or the payment method type, this is your flexibility to do so. Now, I'm not too sure how familiar any of you are with payment solutions, but typically, oftentimes, what will happen is a lump sum will be taken out of your bank account to pay off your vendors from there. But the implication of that is that you'll lose the visibility on your bank statement. The way that we operate is that we integrate directly with your bank account. So that means that every transaction will appear as its own line item so that reconciliation process remains intact. So that's why this section is extremely important. As soon as you confirm these details and submit for approval, based on the approval matrix you set up at the payment approval level, your payment signers will come into the step here and approve or reject. Now, the awesome thing about this button here is that when you're approving the payment, and my example here is a check, this is as if someone's manually signing off onto it. So no more need for paper or manual labor or even those face-to-face interactions, since you'll be able to complete your entire check run with a few clicks of a button. So that's what this approval button represents at the payments level. Once that's completed, you now have your layer of control in the release tab so that you can actually indicate when you'd like those payments to go out. Now you can make your selection, release payments. So once that's completed, here comes the sync again. So the Pay tab serves the same function as the Export tab. This is where we'll now communicate back to your Sage accounting software that these payments have been made, so you can sync it back. And then that leads us back to our online filing cabinet. So this is where you'll have access to all the transactions that have been performed, so that when you generate a report on this screen here, you'll not only have all the details I showed you previously, but each of those invoices will be linked to transactions as well. So an even more holistic view of those items that you're generating a report on. And that is what the payment workflow would look like if you automate it through us. Again, if you choose to have that in-house, no problem. We have the dual sync on payments. So we'll still be able to reflect if your invoices have been paid and show you those details. And now to wrap up our entire software, we'll quickly touch on purchase orders. Now, purchase orders are slightly more special since it's possible to have different types of workflows across different clients. And the options that are available here, and this is great in case that if you already have an existing process in Sage, let's say you're creating purchase orders there and have a receiving process, we built an integration that can immediately pull those details into the committed tab so that you can have those purchase orders matched to invoices and adopt the coding from there. So if you require further details or would like a deeper discussion on three-way match, we're available to do personalized demonstrations or chats on that topic. If you're looking for a way to manage purchase orders within our software, that's what I'm quickly going to run you through this section up here at the top. So for any users that need to create a purchase order, the create step will be their first step. They can select the legal entity. If there's only one, even better, it'll automatically default to it. And from there, as soon as the legal entity, your list become available for selection, so they can start coding as much as they can of that purchase order. So as soon as they complete entering in all the details, the two actions available are save or submit for approval. Save will send it to the In Progress tab so that they can revisit it or complete it at a later time, or if they've done everything they possibly can, they can submit directly for approval from here. Now, the nice thing when you click either of these actions is that we'll take the data that you've entered it in and we'll convert it into a PDF in case you ever want to PDF and then email it out at a later stage. You'll also have a digital copy with your customized logo, so you can use it for internal and external purposes once it's approved. So again, once you submit for approval, similar to the other modules as you've seen, in the approvals tab, the approvers will come in, approve or reject their items, so that once the purchase order is fully approved, in the committed tab, you'll have your queue of all of the open purchase orders. So that includes details such as the total amount for purchase orders, the amount that has been matched, and the remaining balance. So oftentimes the committed tab I've seen used as budget controls. Clients typically love generating reports on customized information such as maybe by vendors or departments. You can build those reports, use the reporting tool to build that CSV or PDF report to do further analysis. Otherwise, what happens next is that as soon as that purchase order is fully drawn or matched, it then graduates to the close tab, and now you have that online filing cabinet again and access to all the purchase orders you processed in our system. And that sums up the entire module or the entire platform, including purchase orders, invoices to payments of Sage AP automation. Going back into our slides here, I wanted to thank you guys so much for joining us. And right before we jump into Q&A, we've got everyone's contact details up here on the screen, so that if you'd like a quote or a customized demo, please reach out to either Will or Mike. And although our offices are closed right now, we are all working remotely and are still operating as normal. We're also partaking in some special initiatives right now to ensure that anyone who needs access to our tool can get it now during these vulnerable times. So we'll be sending those details about this promotion along with the recording within the next few days. Now I'll open it up back to Will so that we can jump into Q&A.
Perfect. Thank you, Annabelle. That was excellent. And we do have a good bunch of questions here. Some I've answered directly, but let's start with the first few. So got asked about exporting a batch from Sage to the bank directly for payment. So there's a couple of answers here before I let Annabelle kind of go back over that. Some of the clients are using, Annabelle, a module called Orchid EFT. So they create a payment batch that's flagged, the vendors are flagged as EFT vendors, and that tool will generate a bank file that you then transmit to your bank. So they can continue to do that in what we've shown, because you could do the approval of the invoice and create the approved payment invoice batch and then generate off of that, or they could even approve the payment batch and then continue on that way. But you may want to also mention, for those that don't use that module, they could pay out of AP automation, right?
Right. Yeah, well, that's a perfect understanding. So our system was designed in a flexible way that if you have other options available to process your payments and you wanted to continue down that line, you can use us for that invoice module. So when we're syncing this information back, because we're integrated directly with the Sage accounting software, when we're syncing it back, it will send these batch of invoices as an unposted batch into your Sage accounting software so that you can continue managing payments as you do in-house today, whether it's through Orchid EFT. And then that way, even though as long as you're marking it as paid within Sage 300, although you're using that different solution, you will then find it in our software here with the paid details. Otherwise, the other option is if we're more attractive to execute those payments for you, you can then continue down this line within the payments module.
Right, and what's happening in the background, correct me if I'm wrong, Annabelle, is if they wanted to do EFT out of Sage AP automation, it's going to basically debit their bank account and credit the vendor's bank account for an EFT or ACH. They could still they could do like printed checks out of Sage 300, just like they would creating the file out of EFT, but you also have a check printing service that's secure, right? We don't really talk too much about that.
Yes, and is that in reference if they were using us for those payment methods?
Yeah, as opposed to printing out of Sage, which they could still do. Printing exactly. Checks out of Sage once once everything's approved and synchronized down to Sage, they could print checks, but they could also use Sage AP automation.
You got it. So if we want to eliminate that paper involved or having to seek the signatures face to face, what we would be able to do for paper checks is completely automated through our workflow. So the approval is the equivalent to signing off on the check, and the release is actually sending it out. So that if you are using us for payments, we will take care of the postage, stampage, and delivery, and it can all be done remotely.
Yep. No more licking, no more folding, no more paper cuts. All good.
Exactly.
It's very cost effective. So won't go into it now, but we can talk with anybody who wants to talk about that as well. So yes, you can continue what you're doing for, printing checks and doing EFT and that sort of thing in Sage now, or you could actually migrate to doing some of that or all of that in AP automation through the flows. So there's both options here. It's very flexible. So another question. Let me just see here. When applying for approval, is it possible to give a reason why we have refused if that is the case? So that's a great question.
Great question. And actually, we require you. So if we go back into the approvals actions, down here below, approve or reject. If you're rejecting, you'll notice that the comment box here is highlighted in red. The reason is that you must leave an explanation why, so that you can have it tracked and it's transparent across anyone involved. So that's exactly why we built it, with the intentions to make sure that the communication is accessible across all the members, so that you have the reasons listed out there for you.
Great. Got a question. Oh, just a follow up to, if you're going to pay a vendor, say using EFT in Sage AP Automation, you pay each individual or group of invoices to that vendor, and basically on your side you're paying a debit fee if you pay debit fees out of your bank account. You're not paying say EFT fees that the bank charges, because you're not actually doing EFT. It's basically a bank transfer from your account to the vendor's account, right?
Exactly. So if you choose to process payments through us, it wouldn't double dip in terms of cost. If you choose to use us, we have exclusive payment partners in order to provide you that level of service, showing you each line item as one transaction. And the cost, you'll only encounter the cost through our payment transaction fees. You would not encounter the bank fees as well.
Right, and there's other types of payments we can talk about too. Things like I mentioned, if you're paying the US ACH, you got basically wire transfers, and so it's very full featured. Did I forget any there? I don't think so.
Well, if applicable, we also do have a virtual credit card program. That one comes with a cash rebate. So if applicable, we've even had some clients that use that product heavily and might even be able to pay off the entire software through the BCC program. And then in the States, on top of ACH, we also have e-checks. Quite a cool option there. It actually gives the vendor the option to select if they want to receive it as a check payment or ACH transaction. So helps them receive that payment quicker.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. And that's available in Canada. The virtual credit card is available in Canada at this point, right?
Correct. The virtual credit card is available in Canada as well.
Does it work with any version of Sage? And I know it works pretty much with any version. I think we've gone back as far as 2012, but I think it'll work with even older versions. Of course, we recommend staying on a supported version with Sage, but you're not limited to that. They've been working with Sage for a long time, so the sync tool can work very far back. So I'll some of these I may look up what versions people on, and I'll confirm directly with them. But certainly 2012, and it may even be before that. I think, Annabelle.
Exactly, Will. You got it. So for Sage 300, we have the sync tool that works for quite a few previous year versions. But of course, if there's a version that is not currently listed, we'll do our best to dig even deeper to see if there's any solutions. So we'll definitely address those case by case individually.
Yeah, people are pretty up to date, so I'm not too worried about it. But I'll go through. Couple more here. Let me just read through it here. When the system's doing the OCR capture, how accurate is the data? So I'll let you answer that, because it's not really an optical character recognition capture. It's a little different, right?
Yes. So if we go back into it, and you've kind of hit the nail on the head there. So with OCR technology right now, what we've recorded is that it's about 50 to 70% accurate, and that causes quite a bit of frustration, since clients would still have to intensely review each invoice. So in order to ensure the level of accuracy people are actually seeking, the reason why we have an overnight process is that we have a layer of human verification that's included for the header details and the dollar amounts down here, so that you can actually get those return on savings in terms of time, and we can bring up the accuracy up to 99%.
Actually, exactly. It's a very good double way of making sure that you have very accurate invoice. And I can speak from experience with some of our clients that either the invoices coming in had issues from certain vendors, and we actually flagged that vendor with the team at Sage AP Automation, and their eyes-on team that actually reviews the invoice every night spent special extra time to make sure that the invoices were correct, because some of the fields were not quite easily viewed. So they made sure that they were correct. So that as we went along, it got even more accurate. As one client that got it at Christmas time about a year and a half ago, they called them the bean elves. Review the documents overnight, and magically you have an invoice the next day. So it works very well, because it's not just machines doing this, it's machines and people verifying. So you don't have to key in the invoices anymore, and they're like Annabelle said, 99% accurate. Another question here, in the payment tab when submitting for approval, if it is for printing checks, is there a way to get signatures of the approval on the printed check? So that would be assuming that the printed checks are going through the payments in Sage AP Automation.
Absolutely. So the way that's going to work is for anyone that wants paper checks to be released out of our system, part of the initial onboarding process is to complete a check signature page, so that we can digitally stamp those signatures on every single check that you send out of our software. So technically, from the vendor's perspective, it will look as if it's coming directly from you. So we'll mirror that check stock, we'll stamp that signature on the check, and that way, that's how we'll be able to accomplish the completed automated check run.
Can it be multiple signatures if required?
We can do up to 2.
Yeah, okay. Another question. Does it automate payment processing for expense forms?
Oh, great question. So technically right now, I would say about 30 to 40% of our clients are currently using us for expenses. The way they're currently managing that right now is, if I open up an example, they will treat each invoice or each item as an expense report. So if I had multiple receipts tagged to this invoice, each line item below can represent each of those receipts, and then they'll treat that one invoice as an expense report. So that's the temporary solution right now. But what's coming up, and I'm very excited to announce, is that although currently we're supporting 3 modules, the 4th module that is on track to be released this year, so by the end of 2020, is going to be called Expenses. So Expenses is going to be a more customized and tailored module to expense reports and employee reimbursement expenses, so that you can get the full level of automation and appropriate tracking within that module. So although there's ways to handle it in our system now, what's to come is an even more customized module by the end of this year for expenses specifically.
Perfect. So you'll hear more about that coming up soon when it's announced. We're getting near the end of time. I've got a couple more quick ones we can go through here that I think we can both answer. Can I work with AP Automation on a Mac or a PC or an iPhone or an Android phone? Or all?
Yeah.
I guess.
Exactly. So I'm actually on a Mac right now, accessing the module here. On the phone, the app is compatible with both iPhone and Androids as well.
Right. So there is an app you download, and it can work on a phone. You can snap pictures of receipts and submit it that way. You can do your approvals and eventually do your expenses. So free app on the Google Play or Apple Store. So that is available. Next question was, do I need a Sage 300 user license? So the answer to that, you want to go ahead.
I was going to say, I think you need, correct me if I'm wrong, Will, but I think you need at least one, but right. the number of Sage licenses wouldn't impact the available seats in Sage AP automation. So if you needed a greater number of individuals to access it in our software, again, you can create as many users as you'd like with those customized user access and permissions so that they can access the invoice details. Is that right, Will?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we would designate one user has to be available for when the synchronization is happening between Sage 300 and AP automation through the sync tool. But otherwise, you could designate as many people as you want to be able to use the web-based AP automation system, submit and approve and process invoices and payments and purchase orders. And there's no impact. You don't need to buy more Sage 300 users. And there's no cost for the users in AP automation. It's unlimited. And that leads into the next question, which was, could I let my auditor sign in and read-only review documents while they're doing an audit? And that's for sure. I know clients have done that. And does it work with the Sage 300 PO module? If we have it,
yeah. Both questions, love them. So exactly, Will. If they wanted to, you can create a user login for your auditors to have read-only access to the archive tab, so they can pull up the information they need right away. We actually had an auditor that loved the software so much, he ended up working for us. So definitely an option if you're comfortable with it. And then in terms of the Sage PO integration, yes, that is that three-way match method I discussed. So what we've developed within the last year, so that was one of the most recent released features, is having a sync at the PO level. So if you wanted us to pull in your purchase orders from Sage, they can arrive into this committed tab so that you can carry on the next steps within our invoice module and still have access to that PO information for match and PO adoption.
Okay, great. So a lot of great questions. If more come in, we'll answer in the follow-up email that will include the recording of this and the slides. Do you want to just talk about, are we going to talk about what's coming in the announcement from the Beanworks team to help during these times?
Yeah, for sure. So right now, I know it's quite an uncertain time period for many organizations, but this has had an interesting effect on Beanworks. And what we found is that a high number of clients are coming to us seeking tools to help support the remote work. So rather than taking advantage of this increased opportunity, what we're willing to do is lend out a helping hand and be as accessible as possible. So one of the greatest announcements is that typically when there's time for a full evaluation process, we've been charging a $3,000 to $5,000 setup fee. What we're willing to do right now is that anyone that needs to have access to this tool is not only delay or defer that fee, we're willing to entirely delay it. So again, that's in an effort to completely de-risk the project so that you can get started right away with no risk or no sunk cost incurred. And that way you can get started with AP automation. And then some of the other initiations would include up to 6 months for free, depending on the type of schedule or agreement you'd like to move forward with.
All right. Well, we're at 2 o'clock. I want to make sure we're cognizant of everybody's time. I want to thank you, Annabelle. That was a great presentation, and thank you everybody for spending the time with us from wherever you are today, and hope you're staying safe, and thanks for the great questions. I'll follow up with this information when we send out the email, and you'll see information about the promos that we're providing during the pandemic. So great time. Have a great day, and we'll be in touch. Thanks again, Annabelle.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone.